Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Unquestionable. I'm your host, Calvin. I have an awesome show set up for you guys tonight, but before I get into anything, I have a couple of announcements to make. Nothing major, just a little bit of an update on everything, and this will probably happen every episode. We're gonna see what happens. Still feeling it out. But first things first is last Wednesday, March 24th, 2021, I was on AZ's Whiskey Wednesday podcast. I'm going to link all of their stuff in the description of this podcast, and I'll also share it on Instagram too. I will put it in the description part of my Instagram post that I'm going to do over there. And I mean, we talked about everything from aliens to samurais to Abe Lincoln and, Elon. Where's Brennan's truck? That's what I'm saying. You got to watch the podcast to know what that's up to, what that's all about. So go check them out. I'm going to link all their stuff. It was a great time. And of course we drank some whiskey. What are you talking about? It's called Whiskey Wednesday. The next thing is that I have a donation link set up now. So if you check out the description of this podcast on Spotify or on Anchor.fm, which is my host for the podcast, there's a donation link there. And you can donate any amount of money that you would like there. You can donate 10 cents, you can donate $10, you can donate $10,000. I definitely won't turn it down if you give me $10,000. I will tell you what. But to be honest, if you don't want to donate, that's all right. You guys just being here listening to this podcast, I mean, you're supporting me right now. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. I mean, it seriously means a lot to me, and I've been getting a lot of love for this podcast. So I'm hoping to do it for a long time. So the next thing would be that social media, my personal social media, I have, once again, like I mentioned, I have it all set up. Facebook is coming. I'm going to set up a Facebook page, but for now I have Instagram, and you can check me out at Unquestionable Podcast. I dropped the at the beginning, so it's just at Unquestionable Podcast. And give me a follow over there. You'll see all my music and stuff over there as well. But with that, let's get into our guest a little bit here. Tonight, I have sitting with us Brien Foerster. Now, if you're not familiar with Brien Foerster, you need to stay and you need to hear what he has to say, and because he's gonna blow your guys' mind, I think, and he might even blow mine. But I've been following Brien for a really long time, and Brien is a world-renowned author and ancient civilization researcher, and he talks about everything from elongated skulls to traveling to Göbekli Tepe and, everything in between. He's been all around the world, and I'm going to link all of his stuff in the description of this podcast as well, but I won't get too much into him here. What we're going to do is we're going to jump over to Brien Foerster. We're going to have a discussion here, and we're going to see what he has to say about some elongated skulls and maybe some other ancient civilizations. All right, awesome. So I'm here with Brien Foerster. Thank you so much for joining me, sir. So in case anyone is unfamiliar with your work, would you mind taking a couple minutes just to kind of explain a little bit about yourself, what you do? I know I've been watching you for years. Like I said, I'm a huge fan of you. So please, if it would just take a couple minutes, tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Well, I was born in the U.S. I grew up in Canada, but I'm a dual citizen, so I've lived in both countries on and off. I've been traveling since I was about 16. And the first ancient site that I saw was Stonehenge in England. And at that time, there was no fence around Stonehenge, so you were able to go right up to the stones and touch them and things. And
that's cool.
I guess that pretty well started my interest in ancient enigmatic locations.
Yeah.
So I've been a fan of ancient Egypt since I was a child. So I've been very fortunate in having been able to travel to about 100 countries so far throughout my life.
Wow, that's awesome.
Of course, my focus for the past 15 years has been megalithic sites around the world.
Wow, that's awesome.
And the enigmatic elongated skulls.
Right. It's incredible. Awesome. Well, yeah, so, I mean, I guess kind of going on the elongated skulls a little bit, I actually picked up your book, Beyond the Black Sea. I picked it up a couple days ago, and I've been reading it a little bit, and man, there's some really interesting stuff that you have written in here. I'm only I think I'm about 30 pages into it, and man, you just keep hitting me with knowledge bombs in this thing. Really crazy. And, I've been really interested in the elongated skulls for the past couple of weeks. I've been, looking into it, and, I've been watching a lot of your videos talking about it. So what do you think is the significance of the elongated skulls? Why do you think that, because if I'm not mistaken, are elongated skulls found on every continent, or am I mistaken on that?
Well, examples of cranial deformation or head binding have been found on every continent except Antarctica, as far as we know.
Okay.
It was most prevalent about 2,000 years ago and was the domain of the nobility of each of the cultures in which we find that phenomenon.
Right. Okay. Great. Yeah. So were they like on different, do they have different purposes on different, like for doing the skull binding? Do you think, is it for like religious purposes, or is it for, is it like a cultural thing that they do? Or is it kind of differ depending on where you're at?
Well, in general, it was the nobility, like the chiefly class and the spiritual or religious class, sort of the higher levels of the society.
Okay.
And yeah, one would think that there would have to be some kind of influence from beings that look like that in order to do such a thing to your children, because it was done to the newborns.
Right.
And the process would take usually between 2 and 3 years before it was complete.
Okay. Wow. I can imagine that's probably pretty painful. I mean, and is there any evidence of like changing of the shape of the brain by chance? Like, because I know, it doesn't seem to really, the shape of the brain doesn't seem like it would fit really well in that kind of a deformation. So do you think, is there any evidence of like any brain contortion along with that?
Well, it would seem so, but again, the majority of the cultures that did this, they were simply changing the shape of the skull. They weren't increasing the size of it or anything like that.
Yeah.
So so the shape of the brain would change to some degree, but of course the most phenomenal ones that we find are here on the coast of Peru, where they seem to have been genetically elongated skulls.
Yeah,
that's something that academia refuses to look at.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, is that, how can, I know that, like you said, some skulls like in Paracas, it seems like they're a little bit more of a natural elongation. So how, is there a way that like you're able to tell like the difference? Like how can you tell the difference whether it looks natural or if it looks binded?
Well, the oldest of the elongated skulls on the coast of Peru, dating from about 2,700 years ago, the volume is 25 to 30% larger than normal, and in some cases even larger. I've seen an example of a newborn baby that looked like it was about twice the size of a normal human skull, like extremely elongated. And there are other characteristics too, like the foramen magnum, which is where your spinal column enters the bottom of your skull. This is as far back as it could possibly be. So that would have to be a genetic thing. There are two holes in the back of the skull, which only appear in the elongated skulls. The eye sockets are bigger, and there's no sagittal suture that comes down this way at all. Like it's simply not there.
Okay. So, do you think that it's at all possible? Like, are you in on the possibility of it being extraterrestrial or being influenced by extraterrestrials, or is that kind of out of your zone?
No, I think it is a possibility because they suddenly appear less than 3,000 years ago, then they disappeared 2,000 years ago. That's not enough time for something genetic to have happened. That would take tens, if not hundreds of thousands of years. So you do have to entertain the possibility that they could have been the result of extraterrestrial intervention, or that they were descended from that, or what we do know is that they were they were not Homo sapiens sapiens. They were a subspecies of Homo sapiens.
Yeah. Okay.
Which, again, academics don't want to look at.
Right. Right. Yeah. It seems like, it seems like every time someone tries to challenge the narrative, because like I've been watching you and I've been watching Jimmy from Bright Insight a lot, and I've been following Uncharted X, all these different channels, and it seems like the common narrative it doesn't like to be challenged. So what is something you think that like a normal person, like little old me, over in Michigan, what do you think that I could do to possibly, if anything, to help get that research out there and done? Is there anything that I could do, you think?
Well, the best thing to do is to visit the locations. Mm-hmm. Like Jimmy and Ben were in Egypt in December.
Yep.
Jimmy's made a lot of videos about Egypt, but he'd never been there, so his eyes are on stocks when he actually got to physically visit this stuff.
Right.
And he was completely blown away. That's you can see lots in pictures and videos, but being on location is where it really hits home that obviously there's a big difference between what the dynastic people could do and what they inherited.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's one of my life goals is to go to Egypt. I've never, I've only been on a plane one time, and it was to fly to Arizona, and it was literally like a year ago. So I'm hoping, to get over to Egypt. That's my life goal, is to see, the pyramids in person and, actually look at it for myself, because these videos just don't do it justice. What I see online, it's beautiful. And I can only imagine, what, you and Jimmy see, when you guys are standing in front of the pyramids, and that's incredible. I'm so jealous. But another thing that's kind of caught my eye too is it's this little, I'm not sure how you say it. It's the Suchuti fetus. It's like the little fetus that has an elongation of a skull. I just kind of learned about it a couple days ago. And it kind of reminds me of, I'm not sure if you followed the finding of the Atacama humanoid. That kind of like, and I'm not sure, I haven't done a whole lot of research on that, so I'm not sure if it's come out as a hoax or anything like that, but it kind of reminds me and looks somewhat similar to that. Do you have any thoughts on the fetus? Like what maybe the age of it was?
Well, the interesting thing was that was, unfortunately, that was before photography. It was in the 19th century that Tachuti was able to see this little mummified fetus,
right?
Supposedly between 7 and 9 months old. That was found inside of a female.
Okay.
It had a complete set of teeth, which is very odd.
So it was actually found inside the female?
Yeah.
Wow. I didn't know that. That's incredible.
And full set of teeth. Again, the foramen magnum is way at the back. And I don't know where it is now, unfortunately. I've asked a number of archaeologists in Peru, where is it? They have no idea. But, that's one of a few examples of where you see a fetus which has an enormously elongated skull.
Yeah.
And that blows the whole theory about cranial deformation.
Right. That makes you look at it. And I mean, that's obviously genetic of some sort. I mean, it's did you say anything about the eye sockets? Were the eye sockets like larger, like what are commonly found in some of the elongated skulls too?
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. I mean, I don't know, so if you're researching that, and what has, the common consensus had to say about that? I mean, has there been any feedback on that? I mean, is anyone taking it to heart, or does everyone just think it's some sort of weird hoax?
Well, it depends who you talk to. The academics, all the academics I know of, they say 100% of the elongated skulls was the result of head binding.
Yeah.
But I've already described a few examples which couldn't be, especially ones that are found as a fetus. So they simply ignore my research, and to some degree recently they've been trying to some degree, cover up the DNA testing results that we found because it doesn't fit with their narrative.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, there has been DNA testing on this, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we've done 20 skulls so far.
Wow. And what were the results of that? Like, what exactly were you testing for in the DNA? I do remember something about coloration of hair being a little different, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's true. All the royalty of the nobility of the fracas had dark red hair.
Dark red hair. Okay.
So that's another genetic characteristic which is not Native American. And of the 20 skulls, only 2 of them showed direct ancestry to Native Americans. The other 18 either showed unknown or results that were more akin to elongated skulls found around the Black Sea area.
Right. Wow, that's incredible, man. I really think that I would hope, because I've been seeing a lot more people get behind this idea of kind of rewriting history and challenging the modern narrative, and everything from the Sphinx to the pyramids and everything in between. And I'm behind it fully. I really think that within the next maybe hopefully 10 years, I would say, maybe we can get a little bit of a change and write some different stuff in the history books. But something else also, I'm just going to keep questioning on things that are really interesting to me and just kind of get your thoughts on them. So the Schist disc, I've watched a ton of videos on it. I've watched probably every single thing you've ever said about the Schist disc, but I still don't understand what its function was. So can you kind of elaborate on the Schist disc and maybe what your theories are about it?
Sure. Well, the disc is about 2.5 feet across. Some people think it's smaller than that. But
yeah, it looks pretty
big,
small.
And it's on display in the Cairo Museum, which is amazing because it doesn't fit in with all the other artifacts you find there. The Egyptologists say that it was a fancy plate for lotuses, like lotus flowers, which is kind of a dumb description. It's got 3 lobes that come up vertically. When it was found at Saqqara, it was found broken, so they did a really bad repair job. So that's why when people look at it now, they go, "Well, it's not, it's not even." It's like originally it would have been technically perfect. There's no way it could have been done by hand, and also the material it's made of is, I think it's called a siltstone. It's not actually schist, so it's a type of clay that's been very fine grained clay that's been metamorphosed. So it would have been incredibly dense in terms of its composition and probably highly resonant. That's what our geologist says. So it has a central spoke that looks like it was fit on top of something and would rotate, maybe at high speed. And that's basically what we know about it right now. The amazing thing is that it's on display, because stuff like that in general, they're probably hiding a lot of artifacts that looks, something like that in the basement of the museum.
Yeah.
That hopefully when the big museum opens up on the Giza Plateau this year, they'll unearth a bunch of stuff that doesn't fit the narrative and will be put on display.
Wow, man, I'm really excited to see that. So, so this schist disc, I believe I saw something about you. I believe it was you. It could have been someone else. Tested spinning the disc, and there was some sort of weird resonance that happens with sound when it's spinning. Do you know anything about the testing that was done with that?
Well, yeah, it's been 3D printed a bunch of times. But unfortunately, 3D printing gives you something made out of resin or plastic. And so it's not going to have the same characteristic. But supposedly, they have, they've made these and they've rotated them at high speed. And it seems to get a specific resonance of some kind. So the idea that it was involved in, maybe levitation or something is a possibility. it's a very much an out of place artifact.
Yeah. So where was I might have missed it. Where was the schist disc found?
It was found under the step pyramid at Saqqara,
Oh, okay.
along with 30,000 to 40,000 stone bowls and plates made of very dense material like granite.
Yeah,
and,
I've seen those.
They've got like 50 of them on display, and they're listed as being archaic.
Yeah.
Which means pre-dynastic.
Right. Yeah, but
so
I mean, you look at them.
Mislabeling.
Yeah, I mean, you look at them, and I mean, these granite, the granite pottery is just, it's impeccable. I mean, compared to, you know, the newer stuff that is sitting right next to it, it's just, how do you think that they could have done that? I mean, I don't think we even really have much technology today to be able to do something like that, do we?
Well, no, to be truthful. The amazing thing is that a number of these objects have protrusions on either end.
Yeah.
So the logical idea would be that these would be made on a lathe. But the problem with that is you would knock those 2 points off every time it spun around. Mm-hmm. So, and the drill holes that go through them are perfect. So it's obviously they were done with a very advanced technology beyond what we have now. And again, listed as being pre-dynastic, mm-hmm. which means that they were made before the time of the potter's wheel. That's one thing that Mark Lehner, who's an Egyptologist, said to people like Robert Schoch, when Robert Schoch claimed that there had to have been an ancient advanced civilization, is Mark Lehner said, "Well, show me a piece of pottery from this civilization."
There you go.
30,000 to 40,000 of these stone objects.
Yeah. Wow. Yes. I mean, what do you say when you say, "Show me the pottery," and, he shows you the pottery and then you say, "I don't believe it." It's, what else do you want me to do? I showed you the evidence, but that's just crazy because those pots are just, it's incredible. And I mean, kind of going off the precision of like the holes in them, like the H blocks, the giant H blocks at, I think it's Teotihuacan. Am I right on that? Pumapuku, that's where it is. Yeah, the drill holes and the exact cuts on these. I mean, what kind of technology did they even have back then to be able? Do you think it's even remotely possible that they were able to do this with chisels and rocks?
No, it's impossible. Even engineers who I've taken to that location, they look at them and they say, I have no idea how we could replicate these today. There are no tool marks, no sanding marks. Yeah. And supposedly the Tiwanaku culture 1,000 to 2,000 years ago, who were maybe Bronze Age level, were responsible for them. It's again, they make these statements which are completely preposterous. Mm-hmm. So it's obvious that the Tiwanaku people found this location and simply adopted it for their own purpose.
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, who do you think could have, been there before? Could it have been maybe? Has there been like elongated skulls found near Pumapuku?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I wonder if it's possible that, maybe that culture that had the elongation of the skulls maybe had something to do with this ancient technology. Do you, does the dating with Pumapuku match up with any dating of the skulls? Like, does it fall around any of the same time periods?
Well, unfortunately, none of the skulls have been carbon-14 tested, so we don't know how old they are.
Wow.
But it's most likely they were from the Tiwanaku civilization. But the construction itself of Tiwanaku and Pumapuku is thousands of years older, utilizing very advanced high technology that we can't replicate today. And again, that's why academics simply ignore these really simple truths, because they're trying to protect a dying paradigm.
Right. I mean, because it's the precision that's, you know, in these buildings is not even just there. It's like you look at like the giant obelisk that's in Egypt is also something I've been looking at. You know how they have, I believe they have like a test rock where like tourists can come up and kind of practice with the pounding of this rock on this stone to test how like this giant obelisk was made. But it just looks absurd. I mean, I've seen documentaries on it, and do you think that that's really how this giant obelisk in Egypt was made?
No, that's why Jimmy recently came up with a video about it.
Yeah.
Ben has done it, and I've done it many times. And we do that just to show the futility of it, because your hand, after about 5 minutes, your hand is exhausted by this process.
Definitely.
And the stone itself is slightly harder than granite. Like, it's slightly harder than granite. So the stone would fall apart, you know, almost as fast as you're trying to pound away to remove material. So again, it's just preposterous. All it takes is a very simple test like that to show that it doesn't work.
Yeah. And I mean, the position that these people would have to be in too. I mean, you look in the crevice that these people are standing in, they're basically, you know, flat up against this wall, and they're expected to, you know, get down on their hands and knees and get under this thing. And I mean, it's almost hilarious to watch videos of, you know, people trying to seriously justify this and how it works. And but I mean, these giant scoop marks that are under it, we don't even have any type of machinery today that could, you know, maneuver like that. So it's just incredible to me that that it's literally right there in front of our faces, and it's just you know, my academics just aren't accepting it, and it's really unfortunate. So hopefully there's some sort of change before too long to where we can, you know, maybe get a little bit more light on that. But wow. And I guess I won't bug you for too long, but the last thing that I got is, so I've been looking at Petra. Okay. So Petra it's one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen, right next to Egypt, that I've seen, you know, through videos and stuff. And the first time I ever saw it was actually the video of you, you know, walking through it and touring it. And when you went around that corner and there was this big, amazing treasury there, I mean, I was just dumbstruck by how gorgeous it was. How do you think that was built? Was that built, you know, I believe the common consensus is that the Greeks kind of had a little bit to do with the construction of it. So how do you think that came about?
Well, it's actually an older culture than the Greeks, called the Nabateans, who occupied the area. But Petra is 7 miles long. It's huge. And all of the western surfaces look like they've been scorched by very intense heat, which is what we find at other megalithic sites as well. This force came from the east and struck the surfaces. The treasury is about 2% of what Petra is.
Yeah.
And there are chambers, I think about 7 chambers at Petra, each of which is about 300,000 cubic feet in size. So there's no way that was done with a bunch of hand tools. And the Nabateans were nomadic Arabic people who, you know, moved into the area around 300 BC. They developed a civilization there, but I'm sure they found Petra and they decided to occupy it. So who the original builders were, Petra is very similar to a couple of sites in Saudi Arabia which have recently been open to tourism, which show the exact same tool marks and characteristics. So I think it's a super ancient civilization in the Middle East who were responsible for that.
Okay. Yeah. So you mentioned burn marks. So do you think that maybe there was some sort of cataclysmic event that happened that might have, you know, basically restart, you know, human civilization, basically? Do you think that there could have been maybe a comet or maybe a solar flare that maybe kind of hit the restart button?
Yeah, I think it was a combination of a bunch of different things that happened between about 13,000 and 12,000 years ago. There's a lot of evidence,
Yes.
Increasing evidence as time goes on, but that was a very critical time period. If you look at the work of Randall Carlson and, of course, Robert Schoch and Graham Hancock and others, increasing evidence that these events happened over the course of about 1,000 years. And if it was intense heat, it would have vaporized any life forms in the area and would have made them uninhabitable for probably thousands of years.
Wow.
So that's what we seem to be seeing.
Yeah. Because I bring it up because I have read all of Graham Hancock's books. I have them all sitting around the corner here, and he's the guy. He's got a lot to say, and it's pretty incredible. I've watched him on Joe Rogan and stuff like that, and him with Randall Carlson. And really, I was a little skeptical about it at first when I first read his first book. I was a little skeptical about it, but then I watched him on Joe Rogan with Randall Carlson, and he totally changed my mind because of the amount of strong evidence that he has supporting a cataclysmic event. It's almost a little frightening because, it just shows that, this can happen at any time, and that we're just not prepared for it. We're not open, because that could definitely rewrite all the history books. So I really hope that, something can change here, and that maybe academics can start opening their minds a little bit. And, definitely John Anthony West, rest his soul. He was, definitely a proponent in it too. And so I really, but I guess I'm really excited to have you on here. And but I honestly, I think I'm literally out of questions. I've pretty much asked you everything that I have had on my mind. And you gave me some pretty strong answers. And but I won't hold you up for too much longer. But I appreciate you, Brien. I'm a huge fan, and I'll make sure to plug all of your information for Hidden Inca tours. I'll link your YouTube channel. I'll link everything in the description of this podcast. And once again, I really appreciate you coming on, Brien. Is there anything else? Do you have any projects that you're working on right now that you want to let the people know that to keep an eye out for?
Sure. Well, we have a major tour of Peru and Bolivia in June, and then another one in August, and then September we're going to Malta for the first time. In October, Jimmy's going to be joining me in Egypt for about 2 weeks for a major tour. Then November we have another major tour of Peru and Bolivia. Awesome.
I look forward to it. I will definitely keep an eye on it. I'm subscribed to all you guys on YouTube, and I follow all you guys on Instagram and everything. So I will keep an eye out, and I'll make sure, maybe I can have you on again sometime. We can talk about, something else, that you've been working on, and, maybe talk about the tours that you're going to be doing. But I won't hold you up, Brien. I appreciate you coming on, my man, and I hope to have you on again.
Okay. Thank you, Calvin.
Absolutely. Keep in touch, Brien. All right, guys. Well, that was it. That was Brien Foerster. I really appreciate you guys tuning in today. I had such an awesome time with Brien. He's such a nice guy, and he's so knowledgeable, and had a really great time. And I really hope to get him on again someday. But for now, I'm going to link all of Brien's stuff in the description of this podcast. And I'll also make sure to link all of AZ Whiskey Wednesday's stuff so that you can check them out too. Check them out on Facebook. You can check Brien out on YouTube, and I'll make sure to link his YouTube in there as well. But for now, thank you guys. I really appreciate you guys listening. I had an awesome time. And remember, question everything.